What's up, Joe? What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Sports 360. I'm Jeff Fennell, and I'm here with my co-host Rob Duran. What's up, Rob? How you doing, man?
What's going on, Jeff? What's going on, man?
Man, I got about 340 million things I want to talk about right about now.
Woo.
How, how's that for cutting to the chase?
Man,
Yeah, man. $340 million. We're we're a couple of days out from Fernando Tatis Jr. signing that massive contract extension with the San Diego Padres. 14 years, $340 million. It's an incredible amount of money. We're going to talk about that contract in various ways, but what was your reaction, Rob, when you heard about the deal, both 14 years and then the $340 million?
I was I was not expecting it. I know there were some rumors about it going on a few months back, but when I saw the number and I saw the years, I was like, what? And then I saw he was only 22. I had to Google it to make sure. 22 years old. He gets this huge, huge extension. Man, listen, 22 years old, $340 million. You get commitment from the franchise. You commit to the franchise. Can't turn that down. Wow.
No, you can't turn it down. Look, in terms of just pure dollars, right? Gross dollars, 340 million, third highest contract in Major League Baseball history, right? Only
Yep.
Trout and Mookie Betts have bigger contracts for now. I think that's going to change, but for right
Yeah.
now, that's where it stands. And for a player like Tatis, who, listen, it seems to me he has all the goods, right? As far as the type of player that he is, and also the type of personality that he is, right?
Yeah.
So he has the makings of, just a special player. But he's played to this point 142 major league games, not even the equivalent of a full season of 162. 142 games, and he got this type of commitment and this type of money, and of course he could not um, turn that down. But as you said, he's 22 years old. But I'm struck by the fact that as well as he's played, he hasn't played that much.
Yeah. And listen, man, those analytics that they got running must be working, and they must be projecting some good stuff for this kid. And we've seen it. He's electric. He's people confuse the face of baseball with the best player in baseball. Best player, hands down, is Mike Trout. You can make an argument for Mookie Betts if you want, but it's Mike Trout. But as far as the face of baseball, who young kids are looking up to, who's out there and everyone is looking at, it's this guy, Fernando Tatis Jr., man. He's electric. He reminds me a lot of, and I know I've heard comparisons here and there, just in terms of like the swagger he brings to the game. It's a lot of Ken Griffey Jr. All the swag, the bat flip, the showmanship, stuff like that. He brings that energy to the game that we've been looking for over the past few years. So, man, but you're right. 14 years for a guy who hasn't played a full baseball season, a full 162 games, it does come with risk.
Yeah, it certainly does. But I like the term you use because I think it's accurate when you say he's electric. Because I think that is a really good way of describing Tatis Jr. Because there are a lot of good players, right?
Yeah.
Mookie Betts is a really good player. He's dynamic. When you see him, it's the plays he makes in the field, his hitting, obviously, but his base stealing and his base running is another aspect of his game. You know what I mean? He's just,
Yeah.
an all around good player,
Super
dynamic.
high IQ.
Yes,
Definitely.
right? Mike Trout is just from a physical standpoint, it's like there's nothing this guy can't do. As
Yeah,
big as he is, he's fast, right? He can run the
yeah,
bases. I think a lot of people don't recall, especially early in his career, how many bases Mike Trout used to steal.
yeah,
So
yeah.
just he's just
And the way he covers center field, man,
oh my gosh,
he, his range is
right,
crazy.
right. But there's something about Tatis, and I think that description that you have of him of being electric is it,
Yeah,
because I think more so than with Trout, who was a very reserved player, and Betts shows some emotion. There's just something about Tatis that, like, he draws your eyes to him. You know what I mean? And he's flashy, he's got some swag, he's got some style, but he backs it up too. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Whereas Mookie is dynamic, but he's dynamic in a sort of all business type of way. You know what I mean? Like he's just, he's like the mature businessman type of thing. Where Tatis is like the brash guy. You know what I mean? Where he's gonna the hair color, the dreads going on,
yep.
the do rag on his head, right? You know what I mean? He got all those type of things, and then he also brings it as a baseball player. So he's just he's just got a flair, man, about him, and I think electric is a good way of describing this guy.
Yeah, man. And listen, I love baseball, but not gonna lie, these West Coast games they start very late sometimes. I'm a dad, I work in the morning, so it's
Yeah,
hard to catch a lot of these games. But Tatis Jr. will make me want to stay up late and watch his games. Like that's the kind of player he is. He makes you want to stay up till 1 in the morning watching him play because you never know what to expect. It's just it can always be something new, something amazing, something crazy going on, and you just want to catch it live.
yeah, and look, and you're right. It's tough. I mean, that's why you want to catch the national games when you can. The ones that will start a decent time on the East Coast, and so forth. Or, if you have, the MLB packages based on whatever cable or direct TV or whatever you have, when San Diego is on the road and is playing on the East Coast or playing, in the Central Division opponents, you want to catch those games
Yeah,
because of the earlier starts. But yeah, he certainly is a dynamic talent who has gotten paid. But um, in addition to his contract and the amount of money and the commitment in terms of years, there's also been some talk as well about Tatis signing a deal with a company called Big League Advance, right? And Big League Advance is a company that gives or advances some money to minor league players who they think, based on their algorithms, are going to be stars. And so they would advance a player some money in exchange for a percentage of their future earnings. Could be anywhere from 5%, 7%, 10%, whatever the case may be. Well, they advanced Tatis Jr. some money a few years ago, and now Tatis Jr. has hit the bank, and so has Big League Advance, right? Because if it's 5%, that's a $17 million payday for Big League Advance. If it's somewhere in between, it could be in the 20s. If it's 10%, it's $34 million. That is incredible. And we
yeah.
haven't even gotten to talk about Tatis Jr. paying Uncle Sam or paying his agent his 4 or 5%. What are your thoughts about that? The big league advance piece of this.
So it's funny because I hadn't heard too much about this stuff until the details of the contract started coming out, and I was like, man, this guy's gonna pay this company, Big League Advance, a good chunk of money. Like you said, it could be up to 30 plus million of his deal, and just kind of looking at the breakdown of his deal, he's not making too much at the beginning in terms of the overall contract, but wow, man, talk about Talk about an investment, huh?
Yeah, for big league advance, for
Yeah.
sure. And look,
Wow.
a lot of the deals that they cut, Rob, they miss on, right? Because,
Yeah.
they're using their algorithms and they're trying to predict which of these young players are going to be mega stars. And so, and they approach them and say, hey, we can give you several hundreds of thousands of dollars, $1 million, $2 million, whatever the case may be. You're a guy in low A or A ball or double A, right? And you can get $500,000, $1 million, and they say for a part of your future earnings. A lot of guys say, sign me up.
Yeah.
But one of the things, Rob, that a lot of people may not realize is that the the, the percentage of future earnings is on baseball related earnings. So it's not just a playing contract; it's the endorsement contract. It could be after the player retires, if he goes into the broadcast booth and he's making his living as a baseball broadcaster because that's baseball related.
Yep.
If he's selling, cards or writes a book or opens up a baseball memorabilia store, right? It's baseball related. So that 10% of future earnings, first of all, is very broad, but it also it can extend far beyond the playing days. And so, you know, um, for big league advance, when it hits, it can hit pretty well, as we see here with Tatis. But the point is, the 340 is just part of the story for big league advance, right? They have more coming, and so um, these things come at a hefty price, and I don't know. I think some players are going to perhaps have their eyes opened on big league advance, um, and maybe think about this a little more if they get the details of how this works. But it's incredible. It's a great payday for Tatis, but also for big league advance.
Yeah. It's almost like a lifetime deal if you want to really kind of break it down almost, because a lot of these baseball players, like you said, a lot of the baseball players, they leave the game, and if they're still popular when the game is over, you see like David Ortiz, for example, went straight into broadcasting right away. Even A-Rod, for example, dude wasn't very popular at the end of his career in terms of his relationships and stuff, but he goes right into broadcasting as well. So a lot of these guys extend their baseball life by going into broadcasting and doing baseball related stuff. So big league advance has a good investment in Tatis, because he may be one of those guys that after his playing days are over continues his baseball career, so to speak.
Sure, sure. And you never know how it goes. I mean, guys could go and, I don't know for sure if it would cover this, but what if the guy goes on to be a manager,
Yeah.
as many players, go on to be? Dave Roberts, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
is a manager who seems like he's going to be around for a long time,
Yeah.
right? So imagine, a situation like that if he had a big league advance type deal or something like that. So, it's an interesting part of the sports landscape today, where you have these companies who are looking to give players some upfront money in exchange for a percentage of their future earnings, and it has to be something that I'm sure agents and union and different players associations are keeping their eye on. Um, but another thing to keep our eye on, Rob, is these other shortstops who are going to be
Yeah.
free agents this year, right? We have this
Big
great
names.
crop, right? Big names: Lindor, um, Correa, Seager, Baez, Trevor Story, right? I mean, you have some elite shortstops, all of
Yeah.
whom are going to be free agents at the end of this year unless they do extensions. And you have to believe, Rob, they're looking at the Tatis deal and saying to Tatis and the Padres, thank you very much. Now, they're not going to get 14 years, right? Because,
No.
these players are 26, 27, 28, maybe a little bit older. So they're not going to get 14 years, but I think they're looking at that AAV of 24 and saying, you got to pay me a whole lot more than that, because you paying $24 million AAV to a guy who, he's not even anywhere near a free agent, right? And if you
Yeah.
look at Tatis, a lot of his deal on the back end is like $36 million. Right? You
Yeah.
see the yearly salaries are $36 million. And so these shortstops are looking at that and saying, thank you very much. Right?
And it's funny because we were talking about this a little off air too, because Machado went to free agency as a shortstop technically. And I know he ends up playing third base for San Diego, but his $300 million contract kind of seems like the low end for a lot of these guys going into free agency, especially if they're able to duplicate the type of success that they've already had. Like Francisco Lindor, crazy on both sides of the ball, switch hitter and everything. Like he's in for a payday. Baez is another one who you just look at him defensively. Never mind what he can do offensively. Defensively, he's a magician. That's why they call him El Mago. And then like you said, Story. You can talk about his where he plays in Colorado, inflated numbers. The dude is a stud no matter where he plays. So these guys are. I'm telling you, the $300 million for Machado, I think it's going to be the low starting point for a lot of these contract talks and negotiations. And I think the one thing that may help teams when it comes to negotiating is maybe looking at, like you said, looking at the breakdown of Tatis' contract, where he gets the $36 million towards the end, to kind of give the team flexibility to retain players or whatever the case may be. But it's gonna be interesting seeing that free agent class. I don't think I've ever seen a free agent class this heavy, like in a premium position like shortstop, with this much talent going into it. So it's gonna be a
Yeah.
fun off season to see how this comes out.
Yeah, no question about it. And I don't know, Rob, if all of them are going to get to free agency.
Yeah,
I think the Mets, really need to,
lock him
lock
up.
up Lindor.
Yeah,
And it's interesting though. There was an article out today where it was saying that there've been no talks so far between the Mets and Lindor. And Lindor said, as most players say, he doesn't want the negotiations to leak into the regular
yeah,
season. So it's there's a deadline to get it done, and that's going to be during spring training. But there's time to do it. There would be time to do it. So that I don't believe is that much of an issue. But I don't know if Lindor. To me, he seems like an ideal extension candidate because the Mets went out and traded for
the
him.
trade. Yeah,
I think Corey Seager may be an extension candidate with the Dodgers. I don't know if the Dodgers would want to let Corey Seager go. And then I think Carlos Correa in Houston could be an extension candidate. So I don't know. I mean, and then also, it's going to be interesting with Story. Now that Colorado has shopped and moved on from Arenado, right? He's now in St. Louis. Are they going to let Story walk, or are they going to trade him at the deadline, right?
yeah,
To try to get some value in return? Because it seems to me Colorado is probably thinking, with the Dodgers there, with San Diego on the rise, and with San Francisco probably being better positioned than the Rockies are in that division,
yeah.
they're probably saying to themselves, it's going to be a while before we compete. And I wouldn't be surprised if they get into a total rebuilding mode.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either. I think three, like you said, Lindor. I think he'll get locked up. Correa. It depends what Houston wants to do. They let Springer walk. Maybe they let him walk to be able to free up some money to sign Correa long term, and kind of keep him and Altuve together with Bregman on the other end. Um, but Story's an interesting one because, like you said, he could be traded at the deadline. I don't know if he'll re-sign there with Colorado after they traded away Nolan Arenado. And then Baez is another one with Chicago. That's another team that you want to see what direction they're heading in. They had rumors of trading Chris Bryant. You want to see what they're going to end up doing with Rizzo at first base, if they're going to extend him, keep him long term. So, and their catcher, blanking on the name, Wilson Contreras. It's going to be interesting to see what they do in Chicago too, as far as keeping Baez around. So, like you said, Lindor, I'm pretty sure he'll stay with the Mets. It's kind of a no-brainer to resign him, especially investing so much in that trade. But the other guys, Story, Baez, and Seager too, actually. I want to say the Dodgers have some depth in the minor leagues,
Yeah.
Maybe they lean on a young guy now that they've re-signed Justin Turner and all that stuff. Maybe they lean on a young guy to come up and replace Seager, but I don't know. Seager's talent is hard to replace, so we'll see, man.
Yeah. But whether it's through extensions or free agency, these these shortstops have to be looking at what Tatis has done and
Yeah.
just say, okay, if this player can get that type of money, and they're going to be looking at the free agent years in his contract, right? And
Yep.
he could get that type of money, and he's played 142 games, and these other players are coming with MVPs and World Series MVPs and all the accolades, Silver Sluggers, Gold Gloves, you name it. They're gonna say, back up the truck. You have to
Yep.
pay me. And that's why I think Tatis's contract is the third highest for now,
Yeah.
because I think, one of these players, if not more, may exceed that. Um, it's also, I think this highlights for us as well that even though we're talking about a pandemic and even though we're talking about a loss of revenues for clubs. I mean, we saw it in the NBA how they signed their players, Anthony Davis getting his monster contract, for example. But here, where you see this contract being offered by a team like San Diego, right? Not a traditional big market team. It
Yeah.
lets you know that there's still money in the game. There's still
Yeah.
money in the game. Um,
Definitely.
so, really, really interesting to see what's going to happen going forward on this one. It's another interesting story, Rob, that's coming out of baseball, and it's just started. I think it just hit the wire in the last day or so. Is we're talking about clubs losing money because of the pandemic, but what do you think about Ian Desmond for the second year in a row opting out of the season? And we're talking about Colorado. He plays for the Rockies. He opted out last year, and he's announced that he's opting out of the 2021 season. He said for now, so he's kind of leaving the door open. But what do you think about that?
I was actually surprised. I didn't realize that. I guess you can opt out whenever you want. You have a contract and you just talk to the team, whatever. But I was kind of surprised to see that he was very quick to say, I'm opting out, like you said, for now. So we'll see what he decides later on. But I guess from just he's saying it's for family, to stay with family during, because we're still in the pandemic and all that. So I guess from that perspective, I respect the guy. I can't say he's wrong for choosing to stick with his family, throughout the rest of this pandemic whenever, this stuff gets under control. But I was surprised actually to see it. And, he's giving up whatever he was earning this year. I'm not sure how much it was. And a guy who's, in his mid 30s at this point, who knows how many more seasons he has left of Major League Ball, and to give up two of them for the reasons he's doing it, it's tough professionally. But on the human side of it, I respect the guy for choosing family and kind of maintaining those core values ahead of playing baseball.
Yeah, I'm with you on that all the way. I mean, I was kind of surprised too when I saw that, because I knew he had opted out last year.
Yeah.
And my first thought was, okay, what's going on? And then I just kind of took a step back. And as you just said, see, this brings to the forefront the human element of
Yeah.
sports, right? Because so many times we look at players and, they're players, they're commodities, they're jerseys and their names, you know what I mean? And we kind of
Yeah.
forget that they're human beings just like us with spouses and with children and with parents and right, just like
Yeah.
everybody else. And in the end, he made his decision based on that. And as you
Yeah.
said, what can you do but respect and honor that decision? And
Yeah. And it's
so,
tough. It's tough
yeah.
because, just like as a father myself, if I had to move somewhere for my kid or whatever the case may be, I'm going to do what's best for my wife and my kid, because they come first at the end of the day.
Yeah. And you do make a good point though that at this stage of his career, he probably doesn't have another big contract left.
Yeah.
And according to the report that I read, you know, he forfeited about $5 million last year because again, it was only a prorated season, prorated
Yeah.
salaries for the shortened season, and he forfeited, according to the report, about $5 million last year, and they said that his contract for this year was 8, which seemed to me
Oh,
to be low. But even if we just took that, I mean, you're talking 13, $14 million for a player who, after this year, the Rockies have an option on him for 2022. What's the chances of the Rockies? I don't even know what the option price is, but I wouldn't think the Rockies are gonna are gonna
yeah.
exercise an option for a player if he doesn't play at all this year, would have missed the last 2 seasons. So,
Yeah.
that option goes
Yeah.
out the window, and so you're essentially talking about walking away from $14 million, and, that's just sort of it sort of brings in, to the forefront even more how important this decision is for him because he knows what he's walking away from, but he also
Yeah.
knows, more importantly, what he's walking to, and that is to his family and looking after them first.
Yeah. And props to him. Respect to that, because not a lot of people would, like you said, even if it's just like I don't know the option either, but just the 13, 14 million. That's a good chunk of change to walk away from and not regret it in a sense. So respect to him for doing that.
Yeah, yeah. But it does highlight that, again, we're going into another season where, we have the COVID protocols. They've been
Yeah.
negotiated by the league and by the union. And the players are once again going to be playing under some very difficult circumstances, and not just for 60 games this year, right? For
Yeah.
162. So it's as we, get into spring training and we look toward the start of the baseball season, it's going to be a challenging season for players. 162 is already a long, long season, but to do it under the protocols and the restrictions that they're going to be under, it's going to be a challenge. No doubt about it.
Yeah.
It's going to be a challenge for these players.
Yeah, especially like you said, the 60 game season gave us a glimpse. So a lot of these guys, a lot of the starters, for example, have to get stretched out, and we may see some fatigue set in early for a lot of these guys once the summertime hits, especially after the shortened season last year. So it'll be an interesting year.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. But yeah, switching sports for a second, man. NBA. One of the stories that is capturing my attention, man, and I almost hate to say this, man, is the Brooklyn Nets. Um,
Oh,
the Brooklyn Nets are looking scary.
yeah,
They are looking like a team that is still early, but it seems to me that they're starting to figure out how to play together. And even though Durant's been out for the last few games, they just went on the West Coast. The Nets did a 5-game West Coast trip, and they swept that series, including beating the Lakers, beating the Clippers last night. And I'm a Knicks fan, so I have no love for the Nets. Okay. And my Knicksies are playing okay. You know what I mean? With Tom Thibodeau got these boys competing, and
that's right.
the, the proverbial, if the season ended today, the Knicks would be in the playoffs now.
That's right.
Now, the season doesn't end today, so that's not worth much. But I'm a Knicks fan, so I have no love lost for the Nets. But I have to give it up. Right now, the Nets clearly look like one of the elite teams in the league. I think they're the best team in the East, even though Philly is record wise maybe a little bit better than them. But I think the Nets are a dangerous team.
Yeah, I think as they currently stand, the Nets are the best team in the East, hands down. Even though the Sixers they're only like half a game up, I give it to the Nets, man. Their offensive firepower is insane, and just talking about the big three, obviously, but Joe Harris is another guy who can knock it down from anywhere beyond the arc. The dude is a sharpshooter, and we see a lot of these teams, they need a player like him. So, the big three aside, they're crazy. They're can't miss basketball right now. And the way Harden and Kyrie have kind of mixed together, which I thought wasn't going to happen. I thought it was going to be a complete mess having Harden and Kyrie together. But they've actually meshed pretty well, especially on this road trip.
Yeah, but there's a couple of things for me. And I'll stay first with the Harden Kyrie thing because it's funny when Harden first arrived in Brooklyn. One of the first things he said was he didn't like the way he had to play in Houston, right? Dribbling the ball for 23 seconds and then shooting the ball.
Step back three.
Right. He said he said he didn't like that he had to play that way. Like he was
Yeah.
being forced to do that, right?
Yeah.
And at first he came to the Nets and he was getting some triple doubles. He would get like 18 points, 11 assists, 10 rebounds, so his scoring was down. He wasn't scoring the 40, 50, 60 like he was doing in Houston, and he was distributing the ball. And I said, "Okay, maybe he really didn't like playing that way." The last few games, like I was watching the game last night, he was playing he was playing like Harden, the Houston Harden last
Yeah.
night. Right? So I guess that's over. That whole I don't like playing that way. But here's the thing. I looked in the box score, and last night the Nets shot 92 shots. Took 92 shots. And Kyrie and Harden took 51. So I think
Man.
about that and I say, when Kevin Durant comes back, he's gonna be looking for 20, 22, 23 shots a game too.
Yeah.
And what I wonder is what's going to give, because something has to give, because Harden can't play like Houston Harden when he has
No.
Kyrie and KD, because all three of them are volume shooters, right? And what does that do to a guy like Joe Harris, who's going to get fewer touches and fewer
Yeah.
shots up, and everybody else, right? Because everybody else is going to get fewer shots too. And so I wonder about that. I think they'll figure it out, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens when KD comes back.
Yeah. I think though, if there is a player that you want coming back per se, it would be KD. I think he's probably the easier transition back into a lineup than it would be, let's say, Harden or Kyrie kind of jumping in. And I think we kind of saw some of that when the Harden trade first happened. It was just Harden and KD, and then Kyrie came in. They kind of struggled a bit. Everyone, freaked out. But I think if you want a player coming back and trying to integrate, what a full squad would be like, I think KD is the best of the three that you want that to happen, because he just seems like his game can adjust a lot easier to the other styles of play. And I think we kind of saw that too with Golden State, him going into Golden State and kind of meshing with Steph Curry and Clay and Draymond and kind of figuring it out that way, even though the chemistry was what it was towards the end. But it'll be a struggle, no doubt, because the shots, there's only one ball. There's three guys who take 20 plus shots on any given night. So it is going to be a little bit of a struggle, but I think KD will find a way to kind of figure it out. But it's going to take some leadership from him as well to make it work when he does come back.
And see, it's that last point that I wonder about, because see, I think it was one thing for KD to kind of fit in, so to speak, with Golden State because they won without him. You know what
Hmm.
I'm saying? Like they won championships without him. They won a championship without him. And so he came in and he added to that team, but you had guys who were bona fide,
Yeah.
Steph, Clay, Draymond, right? And they had won without him. And so there was a little bit of let me be the good soldier type thing. Um, I think with the Nets, when he signed with the Nets became his team. And now, and Kyrie was coming along as Robin, right? But now you got Harden there, and they're playing well without KD. And the one thing KD has shown over the years, he's a sensitive fella. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? His
Yeah.
feelings get hurt real easy. You know what I mean? And if he comes back in a town as tough as New York, and the Nets all of a sudden aren't clicking on all cylinders as they are now, and people start saying things like, "Well, when KD was out,
Rabbit ears.
the Nets were doing
Right away.
better." You know what I mean? Does KD start sulking? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I mean, that's the one thing I wonder about because KD seems to me over the years to be a guy who pays attention. This don't forget, this is the guy who had the phony Twitter account, right? Didn't he
Yeah.
have a phony Twitter account
Yeah.
where he was saying great things about himself?
Yep. 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 Yep.
So this guy is sensitive. So I just wonder if the Nets hit the skids, and the skids doesn't mean that they lose 7 games in a row, but let's just say
Yeah.
they like 4-3 when KD comes back. They're gonna go, well, they were on a 6 game winning streak, and they were
Yep.
playing, beating the best teams in the league. And now since KD is back, the Nets are 4-3 and they've been struggling. Their chemistry is off. I wonder how he takes that.
Yeah, and I think that's the big. I agree. I think that's a big question mark because, like I said, it is going to take leadership from him to make it work again. Because Harden can do his thing, Kyrie just does Kyrie things, but it's going to take KD to come in and kind of really integrate himself and his teammates around to kind of continue that chemistry and that streak that the Nets are on. But for all I care, they can go on a 10-game losing streak, and let's see those Knicks go up a little bit in the standings.
That's what I'm talking about. Go New York, go New York, go. I'm
There's
down
only
with the
one.
orange and the blue.
There's only one real New York team in
That's what
basketball. We
I.
know that.
That's right. Everybody knows that. Only these Johnny come latelys are all on the Brooklyn bandwagon.
That's right.
But here's the thing. Here would be my season right here. I think the Nets are the best team in the East.
Yeah.
Right. Boston is struggling. 500 team right now. The Heat, because of early season injuries, Butler's been out for a while, but he's back now, and they I think they're going to hit their stride, but they're struggling. They're below 500. Milwaukee's toast. I'm going to be the first one
Oh
to
yeah.
say it. Milwaukee is toast. Their window has closed. Championship aspirations, not this year. They're not going to make it. And here's the thing, and we can talk about this another time. But Giannis got to improve his game
He
because
does.
it's you play the lesser teams, and yeah, you can drive to the hoop all day long and dunk and do all those great things that he does. He starts playing against a top-notch team, and they know how to defend him. They put just bodies in front of him, and he
Yeah.
can't shoot right well enough where he can make them pay for sagging off on him and trying to just keep him from getting to the rim. But I just think Milwaukee's done. I'm sorry. So they're done. But here would be my ideal scenario. The Nets finish as the top seed in the East, and their matchup in the playoffs in the 8th seed is the New York Knicks.
That's right.
And the Knicks pull one of them Allen Houston shot bouncing on the rim as they beat the Miami Heat. Remember that when they were
Yep.
the 8th seed and Miami was the number
Yep.
1 seed, and the Knicks knocked the Nets out of the playoffs. That's what I'm hoping for come April.
I'll take it. I'll take it. And we got to get Julius Randle in the All-Star game.
Hey, Julius Randle is going to be in the All-Star game. He has to be.
Yeah.
I wasn't, I liked Julius Randle when he was in college. I thought he was a really good player. He got drafted by the Lakers, right? And then he broke his leg early in his rookie season. And he kind of fell off the map a little bit in terms of, just being a prominent player. And so when the Knicks got him, I'm like, okay, Julius is a good player, but it's not like he's a marquee guy.
Yeah.
But you know what? To see him play this way and to see the Knicks play this way, it playing better, it shows you the value of good coaching. Tom Thibodeau's a good coach.
Yeah.
And he has these guys playing with a purpose, right? They know what they want to do. They may not always execute, but they know what they want to do. They have a plan when they go out on the court, and you see that game in and game out, and it shows you the value of coaching. Tom Thibodeau's done a great job with these guys.
Yeah, coaching makes a huge difference, man. Huge difference because Julius Randle was a joke, because they were supposed to get Zion and KD and Kyrie. They end up with Julius, and then he has, he played decent last
Mhm.
year, but having Thibodeau in there this year, like he's asserted himself, and he's still a young guy. He's only 25, 26 years old, so he has some potential, and I think he may not be, the number one option in a championship team, but he's a solid guy to kind of take this young Knicks team and continue to build on them, and eventually maybe get a guy or two in free agency somewhere down the line and make some noise. I like Julius Randle, and I like the whole Thibodeau thing, man. I think that was a great hire by the Knicks, and I'm hoping that from here on out, with the moves they've made in the front office and things of that nature, that culture shift begins to continues to happen, because we've already seen some changes in the culture of the Knicks, and James Dolan just has to keep staying out of the picture. Let the basketball
Yes.
guys run basketball and just do their thing, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, look, I think Julius Randle will make the All-Star game. The All-Star game has its own controversy behind it, right? Because a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
players have sounded off on it and said they don't want to play and there shouldn't be an All-Star game. What's going on? We got all these COVID restrictions and everything else, and now you're going to bring us all into one city. And they have a
Yeah,
point. You know what I mean?
they do.
They have a
Bring them
point.
all into one city and then send them out again.
Right, right. They have a point, and so this lets
Yeah.
this is about the do re mi, right? If you're the
Yep.
NBA, that's it. That's what it's
Yep.
about. And so you hear players voicing their concerns, but there is going to be an All-Star game. Adam Silver pretty much said there's going to be a game, so everybody might as well just stop. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's going to be a game. I think Julius Randle should be in that game. But the Knicks are playing better. The bar is low on that, right? The Knicks have been so
Yeah.
bad over the past few years. So to say they're better, that's not saying that much. But
No.
but they have been noticeably better. I mean, I think they're 15 and 16 right now.
Yeah.
They're in the seventh spot in the East, and I think they can get better. I think they can get better. So
Yeah. You can even see it even in their losses. The intensity they play with is so different. The energy they have, even in losses, is night and day. Night and day.
yeah. Yeah, but right now the Nets are feeling their oats and let them,
Yeah.
but my Nixies are coming. They're coming. Last thing I want to say is another interesting storyline out of the NBA is out west where Anthony Davis with the strained Achilles. I mean that always has to concern you,
Big
when
time.
they talk about a strained Achilles, because next thing you know you could have a torn Achilles and now you're talking about being gone, for an entire season. And if it happened now, that means he wouldn't come back until sometime after the 2022 season started.
Yeah.
So that has to be a big concern. And I would have to think that LA is going to not rush Anthony Davis at all. But what's that going to do to the Lakers in terms of their positioning out west? I just don't think, as great as LeBron is, I just don't think he's going to be able to keep them at that high level that they were playing with Davis in the lineup, that he's going to be able to maintain that if Davis misses an extended period of time. They're already talking that he's going to miss 2 weeks. So
Yeah, and it's
that's,
funny because I was actually watching the game where he got re-injured because he was already having trouble, and my first thought was, I hope that's not a torn Achilles or like the KD situation from a few years back, where they said it was a calf injury and then it ended up being the Achilles and then it tore it. I was hoping it wasn't a torn. Luckily, it's not. But if I'm the Lakers, honestly, you have to weigh the options of, do we want a high seed? We're going to make the playoffs anyway because we have LeBron. That's an automatic playoff berth. But do we want the high seed, or do we want to protect our long-term investment and our player and make sure he comes back this year? I would shut him down as long as possible and just, go for the playoff run, if anything, if I'm the Lakers.
Yeah. I think they have to give him as much of an opportunity to
Yeah.
recover. And so we'll see what happens, because I think, if the positioning out west starts to exert some pressure on them, AD may start to feel the pressure, and he may want to
Yeah.
come back. All these guys are ultra competitive and everything else. And sometimes you got to save them from themselves, right?
Yep.
And tell them, no, you got to slow it down. So we'll see what happens with this one. But to me, that's one of the key storylines out west. But right now, for me, man, like I said, I hate to say it, but the Nets are looking pretty good. But when it comes to the Knicks, that object in your mirror is closer than it appears, Brooklyn. That's all I got to say about that. We coming for you. We coming for the Nets.
There's only one New York team in the NBA.
There you go. All right, brother. Well, look, man, good catching up with you and talking through some of these storylines and everything else. And spring training is getting into full swing. And so there'll be a lot of baseball to talk about, a lot of NBA. So look forward to coming back again and doing it with you one more time when we come back with another edition of Sports 60. So be good, man. Until next time. And we'll chop it up again.
Sounds like a plan, man.
All right. Thanks, Rob.